Hey, thanks for watching. This is another comic chat with another cartoonist who is probably more known for their music. Um, Hope everyone's doing well in these weird times. I'm actually just going to invite the person in that we're talking to today, Jeffrey Lewis, Jeffrey Lightning Lewis. Cartoonist, musician, sometimes on stage. Just wait for the internet to catch up. Hey.
Hey, I guess working. Do I need more light? Let's see if
I
I can
think.
be
Oh,
somewhere with more light.
yeah. It's a little dark.
Um, well, maybe that's better. I don't know.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I guess as well as anybody can be doing in these stupid times.
Yeah.
Um, could always be worse. Uh, there's always, there's stuff to work on, and there's food in the refrigerator, and what the heck? We're it's like sort of like being at war, but there's not actually any people trying to kill us.
Yeah.
So could be worse. Are you in Newcastle?
In Durham, which is the next town over. So it's a bit of a quieter place than Newcastle. So like I can walk for 10 minutes and be in a field. So it's quite good to kind of clear your mind. It's quite easy to just wander off into where no one else is. Do you have anything like that in New York apart from the parks?
Well, New York is definitely pretty dense, and since the weather turned nice for summer, the streets are just as packed as they would be in non-virus times, really, especially with these new ordinances where all the restaurants have outdoor seating, which is a huge change, which looks really nice if you're going by on a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a European city with all of these outdoor cafes and outdoor restaurants, but it's pretty stressful just walking down, if you're out there trying to walk down the sidewalk, because it's just crowds of people at the tables. Nobody's wearing masks if they're eating. So it's kind of like lively to see from afar, but I haven't really felt comfortable like actually participating that much.
Yeah.
But there's, I mean, I go jogging every other morning, and I definitely, I get out doing that regularly. Try to just, find different jogging routes, and so I do get out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a weird time, and I don't think it'll feel ever real for the people who lived in it. I think it's almost like um, I don't know, it's like World War II or something. Like it must be impossible. I almost like for the people to live in it is kind of surreal, but I think it's almost weirder for the people that weren't there to imagine it. I'm not comparing this or saying it's the same as World War II or anything, but it's just such a weird thing and it's hard to grasp, and then it becomes normal, like this is the new normal. Um, and yet it's not. It's and then you're the only one wearing a mask, and you're like, am I just or realizing that this is like insane? Like everyone else is just going into the shops and going to restaurants like it's like it was December or something, and it's just normal. And then that puts you in a weird mental space of, am I the only one who is like freaking out over this? Because everyone else seems pretty okay with just going to shops and cafes. So
Yeah, well, I think like anything, it's very hard to give it a mental shape until it has a beginning, middle, and an end. And, if we were in World War II, if it was like 1943 or something, and you were, you just don't know when it's going to end. Mm-hmm. So as soon as something, when something eventually does end, whether it's a year later, 5 years later, or 10 years later, then you sort of give it a shape, which in some ways I think relates to storytelling or songwriting or certain things that I do, where part of the challenge is figuring out how do you take this and give it some kind of beginning, middle, and an end structure, whether it's in a comic book or in a song. And then once it has that kind of framework, it's so much easier to just kind of stack it in the Indiana Jones stack of treasured items at the, in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I always think of that warehouse. Mm-hmm. I think like once something is kind of boxed up, you can kind of shelve it and it becomes part of, part of your, I don't know, your mental warehouse or whatever, or part of everybody's story. Like, okay, that was that chapter. But it's like reading a chapter in a book and you just don't know when the heck it's going to end. I don't know. Whatever, we're all kind of going through it together, I guess, in our own ways. But I am curious what art and what music is going to, what cultural changes are going to come from this. And I've certainly just been working on stuff myself. Like, it's like all I do for the most part. I have my to-do list, and that's like all I do every day. I've just put my little colored check marks, and I spend 1 hour on each thing, and I've just been doing that for, page after page of these to-do lists. I just set my timer. I do 1 hour of working on coloring this one project, 1 hour of songwriting, 1 hour of working on my new website, 1 hour of, work. So I could show you some. I've got one of the projects that I did was I created a wraparound cover for my Fuff Comics series. So this is like, it's got all the issues inside, but I've created this dust jacket that itself has a cool little 3-page comic interior that's like exclusive to this collection. So I'm currently talking to the printer to get that printed and assemble all of these complete Fuff packs. And then another project, I know that you and I had talked about, we were going to reissue the old Key West comics. So I've basically been, in this time when I haven't been able to tour to make money, my job has just been to make things that I can sell from my website to try to replace that lost income. So I just keep coming up with all these things that I can create and like moving them into my store. So I am trying to work on reprinting that Key West comics. I'm drawing a new cover for it. I'm doing an updated cover. So the cover's almost finished. A big pain to draw a map to accurately. So I haven't quite finished penciling in the areas around Maine and Canada. When I get that done, I'm going to finish coloring that. One major problem with reprinting the Key West comic is that I realized I scanned in all the original art, like I sent you those scans, but then when certain elements of the old print, the most recent printing is maybe from the year 2000. This is quite an old comic book. It's been out of print about 20 years. So cleaning up the scans and putting everything together, I realized there's a little note in this 2000 edition that says, like, this edition contains a number of improvements from the earlier edition. So I was like, oh my God, what were I have no idea. So now I'm going to have to go through every single panel on every page to try to figure out what improvements I made from the original art, because all my scans are from the originals. So that's a whole annoying chore, but it's just one more chore on my to-do list. Another thing I've been working on is I've got a few new big illustrated book songs, because I've been working on the next chapter in my history of communism, which is going to be the story of communism in Chile, which is a story that I've been researching and working on for a while, reading various books. So I'm working on that, but I also came up with this idea of something a little more lightweight and less depressing and less heavy. like, what if I just did Jeffrey Lewis movies of classic literature or classic films? So I've got a whole list of ones to do. So now I've done The Great Gatsby. So I have a whole song, illustrated song story that tells the story of The Great Gatsby, and that's the first in my series of Jeffrey Lewis does great literature song stories. And then I've done, I want to do a whole series of films, like the Jeffrey Lewis Criterion Collection. So I have a whole story song of Star Wars. So, all of these, for people who haven't seen me do these performances, it's like it's like a little 2-minute song that I sing while I'm flipping through the illustrations that show what I'm talking about. So, if I'm just stuck indoors in my apartment for another 10 years with this virus, I've got plenty to work on. I'll still, they'll come up with the vaccine in the year 2035, and I'll be like, wait, just a minute. I'm not done with this work. I'm not ready to go outside yet. I still got stuff I'm trying to get finished. And other stuff. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff. Oh, here's my other. This is ridiculous. I'm just,
No, it's great.
I've got a whole system on. I'm hitting one of my 1-hour tasks is to hit OkCupid. So I've got this whole chart of my OkCupid results. Like, how many profiles do I look at? How many people do I message? How many responses do I get? So I'm just trying to keep, careful statistics and graphs of everything that I get done. And let's see, at this point, maybe but if I keep on doing all of these little weird graphs and stats, by the time I get out of this apartment 10 years from now, I'll have many scientific studies to present to the world.
How many people on OkCupid realize that you are the cartoonist musician Jeffrey Lewis?
Well, that's actually, it's kind of a bit depressing because out of let's see. Well, I've only been doing this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out of the days, maybe like the 15 days or let's see. I've sent of the like 110 messages that I've sent. Mm-hmm. The only 2 people who wrote me back were people that already were the people who knew me through art or through music. Right. So that's, in some ways, of course, that just compounds the usual low self-esteem thing of like most artists. It's like, oh, people only like me because of my art. But yeah, all right, why not? That's not a bad reason to like something. There's plenty of people that I like because of their art. So why is that a bad thing? I like my art, so I hope that other people like it too. So.
Well, that's really cool to see a lot of these comic projects coming to completion. Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I hope we have time to kind of go over it all. Instagram only lets you record for an hour and then it cuts you off.
Well, that's good because this whole interview is just going to be my 1 hour of one of my categories of 1-hour tasks is 1 hour of things that other people request that I do. So you're taking care of my 1 hour of something that I'm doing for somebody else. I mean, Peter Stample wants me to write liner notes for his new album. My friend Lisa in Paris wanted me to draw a logo for a new music project. So, in my tasks, there's like the tasks for other people that get 1 hour. 1 hour. So you've already used up 14 minutes of your hour, Mama.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of briefly let people know that you do a bunch of comics. You've been doing them at least since 98, I believe. This is extremely rare, I believe. If you even know what that is. It's a Olive Juice Music Mini.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, just a Fluff, 12 issues of Fluff.
Yeah.
I take one to every...
13 now.
13, oh wow. Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, because there's number 0. There's the number 0, but then the newest one is number 12, which just came out in February.
So, in regards to Fluff, why is that series ending? Why are you kind of calling that? Well,
I just figured I was pretty annoyed of the I just got tired of the title. I'm pretty much going to keep doing the same thing,
Right.
but I'll start with a number one. I'll start with a new number one, and I'll come up with a new title for the new series. I already know kind of what it's going to be, and I'm just trying to think of what stories should be in the new number one. I have like a list of possibilities, but I haven't started tackling it yet. I see somebody's asking if I have a new album with Stamfel. I actually have 2 new records with Peter Stamfel that have not been released yet. 2 albums that I recorded with Peter Stamfel around, we started in 2015 to 2018. There's 2 albums worth of material that we're kind of working on the liner notes, and I don't know when that stuff is going to see the light of day, but there's some very good stuff on there.
Yeah. You also said you were going to record, or you have recorded material with Kramer again?
That I kind of chickened out. I haven't gotten that off the ground. Kramer got in touch and wanted me to send him. We talked about me sending him a bunch of demos, and that maybe we would collaborate on some stuff. And that was all before virus stuff hit. So I have a giant pile of song demos, and I'm always trying to add more songs. And think of which songs might be good to keep and which ones I kind of end up rejecting. And I was going to send a bunch of these songs to Kramer, but then I was just like, oh, maybe, I don't know if I feel like sending these songs out on the internet. Maybe I should stamp them in some way that makes them unleakable, or maybe I should just send him half of each song, so he gets the impression of it, but the song doesn't end up being out there before I'm ready for it to be out there. And then it just fell by the wayside. It just took I just couldn't figure out how to do it. Like many other things that are, a million other things that, especially when there's things that like people ask me to do, like, can you send me a bunch of these songs or send me these, I have so much of my own stuff to do that I might spend a couple of days pursuing something that somebody asked me to do, and then it just gets too complicated, and then I just forget about it.
Your list is endless. Like, I really do feel like you're kind of one of the hardest working people in just whatever this scene of music is. Fuff covers so many different themes: zombies, travel diaries, stories my dad tells, sex diaries, history comics, touring life, comic book shops, being angry at Daniel Klaus for never putting out another 8-ball. So the next series is it's going to continue in terms of like whatever you want to draw, you'll put it out. Do you know roughly what you'll be putting? Like, will Stories My Dad Tell kind of continue, or is it like that's all Fuff, like that will not come into the new series?
I think it'll all be about the same. I'll probably have more of that kind of thing. As far as I'm concerned, it'll just be as if I was doing another issue of Fuff. The only difference is that I'll have a new title and starting from number one. However, I also like the idea of a restart, because I think I've gotten better over if I look at the early Fuff issues, there's a lot to me that's clunky about the drawings and the lettering and the page layouts, and I feel like it would be nice to have a new series start from the level of skill that I'm at now.
Yeah. This year I'm putting out my last Eyeball Suck for that same reason. I just see it as, and I want to start something else again, but that was like, just, the first issue was like, oh, I just have an idea, I'll make this issue in 6 days or something, and looking back, I'm so embarrassed by it, and now I feel like 10 issues on, I can kind of be like, okay, I know I want a certain design. I should maybe think of actually a logo for the first time ever. So I think that's a good idea to kind of, for yourself, to kind of be like, there's a separation, there's a line in the sand, and you're at this higher level of like cartooning now.
Well, I love your comics, and I'm if anybody watching this has not read the Eyeball Suck comic series, I highly recommend it. It's been one of my favorite things every time I get my hands on a new issue. So that's very recommended stuff, and I look forward to whatever your next project is.
Thank you. That's honestly, I remember seeing you. I've been a Jeffrey Lewis fan now for over 11 years, and I think at one show you were like, I Will Suck's one of the best comic series coming out, and I was just like, okay, well, I can kind of die happy now. Like, um, yeah, um, yeah. So I know you're being productive, like you're putting out stuff endlessly. Is it kind of weird, especially for the lo-fi movies that you do for your gigs? Is it kind of weird to be doing that stuff, knowing you don't know when you'll actually be performing a lot of this stuff on stage? Like you're kind of building up all this material, all these new songs, all these lo-fi stories, and yet you don't know when you're gonna actually be able to play this on a stage in front of people. Is that strange?
Yeah, it's pretty lame. I'm not happy about that, and all I can do is just keep putting one foot in front of the other with the expectation that someday there will be a time when live performances are going to be able to happen
Mm-hmm.
again. And when that time comes, I know that I would be terribly embarrassed to get on stage a year later, 2 years later, and people coming back to see me, and I'd still be playing the same old stuff that people just be like, you've had like 2 years and that you haven't come up with anything. So that's constantly, I always feel like there's just a responsibility as, what is my job is to create stuff. So if I show up at a gig, a lot of it cycles through like, okay, if I might come back to Durham or I might come back to Newcastle and it's been a year or it's been 2 years, I always want people to see like, I can't show them the same thing that I showed them last time. I always try to, keep, and I have, but, it's not about just doing there's old songs that I would like to cycle back through, stuff that I haven't performed live in a while. I'm working on reissues of certain old recordings and certain things that I haven't performed live. Or, I don't know. I just always like it to be a mixed bag of new stuff, old stuff. But I very much am picturing the things that I'm working on as being something that makes sense in a live performance. And even just for merchandise, I very much want, I want the Key West comic to be an item on my merch table. I want, even the FUF 12 issue, I barely had a chance to sell that because it just came out in February and barely anybody has had a chance to really see it. So I'm just, that's my environment where all of the things that I make can intersect with the outside world, and the internet can't really substitute for that.
Yeah.
With the lack of that live space and forum is definitely pretty lame for me, but it'll come back eventually, someday.
Yeah. Now, I guess not a lot of people know this, but you were always more, I want to be a cartoonist than a musician, and now it's kind of been my full-time gig is making music so that I can kind of, as a side project, do comics. And yeah, like I was watching an interview I think you did just a month or so ago, and you were kind of saying like I failed as a cartoonist. I'm 44 now, and this isn't my full-time thing. It's something I do on the side. And I love your comics. Like I think they're like, I mean, Fuff really is the only alternative comic that's still coming out. Like I think Peep Show's going to start coming back, but essentially like, it's there's nothing really coming out like that, and I love it so much. But someone did have a question for me, and that I'm curious what your answer is. They said, do you see any similarities with kind of making music and comics? Like, do you feel like there's a crossover in any way?
Well, I do think that there's a crossover in that these are kind of people's art forms. Folk music, punk music, and comic books are three very hands-on art forms that don't have the same kind of barriers to participation as, say, the skill required to play jazz, or the funding required to make a film, or the amount of people required to do a theater piece. there's just something very immediate. They have an immediate gratification element to, comic books, folk music, and punk music. It's just like you can just do it much more directly than certain other things. So in that sense, I think there's a crossover there. It's like art for people who are impatient, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and well, interestingly, I guess comic books and music you can approach it from any level of skill and still come up with something that's as great as the greatest things in the field, I think. I think some of the best, recordings, some of my favorite recordings have been made by people that have a fraction of the skill as certain other musicians, and ditto for comic books. I mean, some of the favorite comic books that I've read are comic books made by people that have a fraction of the illustration skill as certain other comic, but they're sort of level playing fields in a way that I don't think you could do. You probably could. Well, I don't really know, but maybe you couldn't do great ballet or great opera or great jazz without having a certain level of skill, or, play great basketball without having a certain level of skill. But there's something about the spirit, the way that your spirit intersects with music and with comics, and that you can get a sense of somebody's emotionality and somebody's passion and somebody's brilliance through comics and through music, just as a sort of pure pipeline to their creativity, where skill could play a role. And of course, some of my favorite stuff is highly skilled. I mean, of course, 8 Ball or Crumb or any, and plenty of music that I love is highly skilled as well. But it doesn't have to be. So there's a crossover there.
Yeah. I once went to this weird show you did in London where it was, I don't even think you performed music. It was just it was almost like a retrospective on your sketchbooks. And I think you try and do like a sketchbook a year, like cover to cover. And you always draw like a portrait of yourself. Would you ever think about kind of releasing something like that? Like it would just be these kind of, I know you draw people on the subway a lot and things like that. Would you ever kind of do a collection of any of that stuff?
I've sort of contemplated releasing, some kind of comic book edition that would just be a collection of drawings from my sketchbooks. But it kind of feels, I don't know if that would be, I might be embarrassed selling that to people because it doesn't feel like well, I don't know, maybe. One thing is I'm working on my new website. I'm trying to get a new website launched because my website is very old and clunky, and I'm pretty close to being finished with my new website. And I am putting quite a lot of sketchbook material on there'll be a page on the website that's just like sketchbook stuff. So that could be, if people care to see any of that. I've slowed down quite a lot in my sketchbook work. I still have, one of my 1 hour categories is still drawing the sketchbook. But, when you were talking about filling up a sketchbook every year, at this point, it takes me about 2.5 years to fill up a sketchbook. I'm embarrassed to say. I still do it. I still keep up the habit. It's still part of my life. I can't imagine not having a sketchbook. Yeah. But the amount of time I spend drawing in the sketchbook is so much less, because in those old days, I wasn't drawing as many comics. I wasn't drawing as many of my low-budget films. The act of drawing had so much more to do with just sketchbook drawing for a part of my life. And in some ways, that was all for the sake of building up the level of skill that I could then apply to doing what I consider the real work. And for me, the real work is some kind of storytelling, whether it's in a comic and now this kind of other form that I've gotten involved in, these low-budget film projects. So, yeah, I do still draw in the sketchbook, but it doesn't feel as worth an expenditure of time as it used to, because it's kind of like, isn't it more important for me to be working on a comic book than just doing these drawings that nobody will see? And also, drawing in a sketchbook is like something to do out and about. If I'm at an open mic, I love bringing a sketchbook to an open mic and drawing all the performers, or, bringing it on a train or something. But if I'm at home, I don't do that much sketchbook drawing at home. If I'm going to draw at home, I might as well work on a comic book or something like that.
have you ever thought about you've had like an idea for a comic and ever thought like, oh shit, this could be 50 pages, and instead of serializing it into FUF or the next thing, have you ever thought about kind of doing a longer format thing? Like I know you put out, I think, like a limited run with Rough Trade, your Watchmen book, but that was like prose, right?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's just I'm looking around trying to find a yeah here. It was just self-published. I did this is the only copy I have left. I did like 50 copies of this just as kind of a test print a couple years ago, and it is just text analysis of the Watchmen comic book. And this is a big project of mine that I've been constantly reformatting, re-editing, and I have a whole new re-edited, reformatted edition that's going to be in comic book dimensions. So instead of being like this kind of oversized big flat book, it'll be a thicker, narrower book, so it'll fit on a shelf with comic books. And I think a lot of the writing has been improved and new sections added and whatever. It just kind of never ends. But that is a project that I would really love to see the light of day. But I've been working on that for 20 years. It's just stupid. I need, and nobody even cares anymore. Like Watchmen, when I first wrote that, when I first started writing that, the Watchmen comic was like 10 years old.
Right.
And now the Watchmen comic is like 35 years old, and it's just I just have to get that finished and out. And I even got to the point where it was like getting assembled by a book designer, and they were helping me put together the new edition. It's just been on my extended to-do list to get that wrapped
With
up.
stuff like that, and when you were in the first couple issues of FUF, were you pitching it to publishers, and have you just kind of given up on that now? Like, are you just like,
I really have given up on that. I haven't sent my stuff to publishers in maybe 20 years or something like that. Because I just always felt like I wasn't good. First of all, I just felt like I wasn't at the level that I wanted to be at to bother sending it around. I was like, well, I'll wait until I get really good, and then I'll send it around. And then I never felt like I was really good enough. And then, oh, hey, Allison, I've been meaning to get in touch with you. I'm going to get in touch with you soon because I want more music recommendations, because Allison had sent me a link to this fantastic album, and I wanted to get more. Anyway, I keep getting distracted by these little names down.
Yeah.
But and anyway, the idea of doing a longer comic, doing some kind of long form narrative, that was something that I, in my earlier years, when I was like in my early 20s and I was out of college and I started doing all this stuff, I did have grandiose plans for these involved long form stories. And I just haven't had the attention span to write something that long and that, well, there's two ways to go about that. I mean, there's a novelistic way that is what I think would be the ideal, something where if you're working on something like Watchmen or Stuck Rubber Baby or something that truly functions as a novel, where from page one, the author already knows how it's going to wrap up. So you can build in an architecture where certain things there's thematic devices and there's foreshadowing and there's subplots that all function because you're not making it up as you go along. But I think the other way to do it is a story that you're just making up as you go along, which, like A Velvet Glove Cast in Iron or Ed the Happy Clown or, some of my other favorite comic book long stories, the authors were obviously just making it up as they went along, and just some crazy thing would happen, one thing after another. And you kind of see the person's creative process in action in that way. So there's two different ways to go about it. But I don't really, I do have certain stories, the therapy story and the stories my dad tells and the sort of ongoing Baby Shoes narrative. I have further chapters in my head kind of worked out of what the next installment would be, but I don't have them worked out in a full, comprehensive, like graphic novel
Right.
way. But I think that would be the ideal. I feel like that's what comic books need, is somebody to approach it in a, more serious, like novel, Great Gatsby style way to really get to another level of quality. But my ambitions in that department are just diminished by, that's what I wanted to do when I was like 25. And now I'm just like, if I wanted to do it, why didn't I do it? Like, why? There must be some part of me that just, I could keep telling myself that I'll do that someday, but it's been 20 years and like I haven't done it. So it's kind of, maybe it's not realistic to think that I would do that.
Can we see your drawing table and your tools and
Yeah, well, I'll give you here's, so I'm sitting at my drawing table right now. So there's the drawing table, and it's got a bunch of crayons on it currently because of working on that Great Gatsby thing. So I don't know if you can see. I'll turn the light on again. Is that better? I don't know. So the first few pages of that, and I'll, someday you'll hear the whole song, and then what else is going on here? Oh yeah, this giant silkscreen, limited edition silkscreen poster that I made with a couple people I know who have a silk screening company. They convinced me to give this a shot. So this is, it's got like glow in the dark ink and stuff. I just released this on my website. I don't know if you can see that thing. So I just started selling those off my website. There's actually there's already only about 25 of them left. So that's been good. So yeah, and then what else? This is like my. Oh wait, can I flip the? I don't have to do this I can flip the camera around. That'll make it easier.
2 hours.
Okay, so here's my kind of. This is the store where when people order stuff from my site, these are boxes of all there's like FUF number 0, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and all my CDs that are available. I've got them all labeled here. So Turn in the Dream Songs and Bad Wiring and the Tuli Kuferberg album and the album of Stamfall and MRI and 12 Crass songs. So that's kind of but this is just the front of the store. That's like the retail store. Then in the back is the warehouse. In my closets, this is like where all of the.
Oh wow.
That's like the back of the store. So there's just like boxes and boxes of all the comic books, all the CDs, packing supplies, all the posters, the fall posters, Silver Jews posters, all of this stuff just kind of stacked up floor to ceiling.
Wow.
And what else here? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could show you my bathroom or something, but here's all the orders that are ready to go out. I mean, these are all the poster orders that have been packed up, and I'm going to go to the post office later today. I have a whole luggage bag full of orders of these people that have ordered like records and comic books from my website. I bring them in a big luggage bag over to the post office, so that'll be one of my jobs today, delivering that stuff.
So your home is really, it's not just where you kind of create, it's also your kind of your warehouse as well.
Yes. And if I love the iPod. I'm a big fan of the iPod, says Remember Perry, a crucial piece of equipment while traveling. Where's that other thing? Well, anyway, I'll flip this back around. If things got to a certain level where I needed to expand and get an actual warehouse or a storage space, I could do that. Because, like right now, I have to reprint FUF number 1. I'm basically out of copies of FUF number 1. So I need to make like another 2,000 of those. I'm trying to work on reissuing my 12 Crass Songs LP. It's been out, the vinyl's been out of print for a long time. So if I make 1,000 of those, that's 1,000 records that are going to come into my apartment, 2,000 comics that are coming to my apartment. When I do when I reprint the Key West thing, I might make, 2,000, 3,000 copies of that. So that's another 3,000 copies. So the expansion and contraction of the amount of merchandise here,
Yeah.
it can get a little frightening because it's like, well, what if I have a flood? What if I have, it's not good for me to have too much stuff here. I need to sell some stuff just to make room for new stuff. But also, I can't just make 10 copies. It's just not cheap enough, to get the price down. I have to make 2,000 or 3,000 copies. And if I'm touring, I'll move them. It might take me 5 years, but if I make 3,000 copies of a comic, they will all move eventually as long as I'm still touring.
Yeah.
So
and I remember,
I've got it all figured out. I keep track of my inventory, and I've done all sorts of mathematical calculations. So I know that at the rate that I'm doing stuff, I can make this much more stuff per year. If I continue playing this many gigs per year, so that's all these.
The first box set, that's limited to 500, right?
Yeah, I'm doing it as a limited edition of 400 initially.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for that is because I don't actually have enough issues. Right. I can only make as many because it collects, I might only have 400 copies left of number 5 or something like that, so I can't make I might have 1,000 copies left of number 8, but I can't make a complete collection without all of them. So I'm limited by whatever I have the fewest of, that defines how many collections I make. The other reason is because, unlike music, a comic book has to have the price printed on the cover, just out of tradition. Like you can make a record and it doesn't say $10 on the front, but if you make a book or a comic, it's supposed to say the price. So I can't really decide. I've got $35 as the price on this. I would be a little scared because it's a totally experimental item for me and I've never done this sort of thing. I'm not sure if $35 is the right price. So I don't want to make 3,000 of these and then find out that I wish I made it 40, that I'm screwing myself over. It should have been $40 or, So that's part of the reason why I'm just doing an experimental, just a few hundred at first.
And for the people that are watching, those first 400 are the first print run, which if you're a nerd collector like me, you want the first print run, even if there's no differences. Although I know, I won't go into it here, but I know a few of your comics from first to second to third print. Let me see if I can find them.
Yeah, I'll fix things up here and there. And
there's always some subtle differences. I won't go into them here. I feel like people have to earn it, but I think on this one there's 3 differences alone from the first to second print run. Even some of the lettering, some of the words is totally different.
Yeah, part of that is just my failure as a humorist. Like I'll try to make a joke, and then I'll look at it and be like, that's not funny. I have to write that again. I don't think people get it. I have to write that again. So, every time I do a reprinting, I'm trying to rewrite it a little bit, usually for the better. Like I really don't think that the earlier editions are better. I think the earlier editions I'm embarrassed of and would rather just have the later, but
When's that box set kind of expected for release? I definitely don't want to miss that.
Well, right now the wraparound cover is at the printer, and I need to make more copies of Fuff number 1, like I said, because I'm basically totally out of those. So whether I was making the collection or not, I would need to make more of those. So that's also almost at the printer. I'm just fixing up the files because the Fuff number 1 comes with the little download sticker for the History of Punk recording. So I also I have to talk to this other company that prints the stickers. Wow. So I placed my order for the 2,000 download stickers, and I'm getting ready to place the order for the issue. But the comic book printer, they're going to give me a little discount if I print 3 jobs at the same time. Oh, cool. So if I wait until I have the Key West files ready, and then I do the wraparound cover, the Fuff 1 reprint, and the Key West reprint all together, I'll a 4% discount. Wow, 4%. But I'll take what I can
I
get.
mean,
So
I'd appreciate that as someone with overseas shipping, being able to buy them both at the same time. I was just going to point out the earlier printing actually did come with a disc, a small
yeah,
CD, which now comes with a download code. But I always think that's I think I remember you saying actually it's not that it is really like a free bonus CD. It's the CD that actually kind of costs more. Uh, that's kind of the incentive to kind of help cover the costs of it. Um, yeah, you're just incredibly non-stop with your work, and I'm kind of glad now you have this time to almost look at some of the projects that have been on your list for 10 years. I think I remember like emailing you essentially 10 years ago and being like, hey, will you ever reprint Key West comic? And yeah, that was like 2010, and it's just taken a pandemic for you to finally have that chance, because I know you're booking all your own shows. Yeah, you are kind of doing everything behind the scenes. It must be very tiring.
yeah. Well, the booking has been that's obviously been a nightmare right now because I booked a whole. I did all the work to book a May tour. I had a USA tour for May,
Hmm.
and that obviously had to get canceled. So then I did all the work to rebook it again for October. And now obviously even October, I had to cancel the October tour because I'm just like, things are not going to be
Yeah.
touring. Normal touring is not going to be possible by October. So now I'm rebooking it all again for April. So that's like totally agonizing because it's such a pain to book a tour, but at least you get to do the tour. And that's like my main source of
Hmm.
income. But to book 2 whole tours and just throw all that work out, all that work in the trash, that's been the most, that's been pretty miserable. So I don't even, my motivation to keep doing the booking work and try to book this tour for April,
Yeah.
it's hard to feel enthusiastic about doing that work. But there's nothing else to do. You have to do it. I keep thinking of it like a farmer. Like a farmer has to plant the seeds. Okay, a big storm comes and wipes out the crop. You can't just throw up your hands and say, okay, I'm never planting seeds again. You got to just go back and plant them again and hope that it works. And then it gets wiped out again. And then you got to go plant them again. You just, you just got to keep doing it.
Wow. Um, what tools, what pens do you use? If you can show us any of the pens that you're using, the pencils.
Okay, well, here's my 2 little packs. So this is what I use for pretty much everything. Say for something like the comic book work. I'll show you the. Yeah. Okay. So like the cover for the complete Fuff collection, I'll start out with a 4H pencil, very light 4H pencil to sketch it out first. And then once I have it sketched out, I'll use a 4B pencil to darken up the pencils and kind of solidify exactly what's gonna end up getting inked. And I'm using like temp for the circles and ovals for lettering. I'll use my templates and just ruler, obviously. And then for inking, it'll be, generally the classic Winsor Newton Sable 7 Series 7 brush and Winsor Newton black ink. And that's like the majority of the inking work gets done with the brush. But then for pen work, for the lettering, I've been getting a little bit more into using pens the last few years, these micron pens of various sizes, size 08, size 05, size 01, size 1. So I'm kind of experimenting a bit more with pens in the artwork in recent years. And then, I'll scan the artwork in until I have it scanned in, and then I'll color it on, in Photoshop on the computer so that I end up with the full color version. being done in Photoshop. Now the illustrated books, the big song books, those are done a little bit differently. And actually, I don't know how well you'll be able to see the pencil work just over the screen here, but like in the Great Gatsby book, like here's, the pages will get penciled with a 4B. I don't even bother with the light penciling because the artwork is so loose. Right. I'll start out with a little layout sketch, like a very rough sketch of what the next 4 pages will look like. And then that ends up getting sketched on here with like a 4B pencil, just because it's very easy to erase. And then I'll go over that just with a Sharpie marker to ink it. And these are just the art in these is very rough and loose compared to the art I do in my comics. I don't know why. It's like when I do these, I'm kind of deliberately trying to do the art as fast and sloppy as possible. I don't really know why. And then, once I have a few pages kind of inked in with a Sharpie, then I'll just start coloring it in with crayons. And the crayons really bring it to life. I mean, that's just, regular crayons. And even though the art is very crude and simple, once it starts being hit with the crayons, it just really brightens up and just pops out. And that's part of the reason why I don't spend that much time on the art, because I feel like the color is really where the action is in these books. Though my comic books are usually just black and white, so I feel like maybe I need to concentrate more on the art in the black and white comics. Wow. So, yeah.
And you've never thought about kind of ever selling any original pages ever? Because I didn't realize that you were drawing on such a large scale for your comic pages.
Well, I have on occasion sold originals, but one of the problems for me is that it takes me so much time to do these that I think I would have to charge more money than, like my art is not worth anything. It's not like I'm a famous artist who, is in like this piece goes for, $5,000 or something. But it would have to in order to justify, like I couldn't just make that and sell it for $100, but it might only be worth $100 because I'm not famous, but I feel like I'm getting ripped off if I sell. It takes me so much work. I'm like, I'm not going to sell this for $100. Mm-hmm. So what I do, a lot of times people will pay me to do recreations, like for example, I just did a piece for somebody a few days ago where for $200, I did a large recreation of an old tour poster where, I just kind of like drew it again, large. And I've done that for a lot of people. For the illustrated books also, like somebody might be like, I really love that one page from the Champion Jim book or that one page from the story of the French Revolution. So for a couple $100, I'll draw them a new version of that page. So then I still have my art, but I've done, they get like pretty much an exact reproduction. But the comic pages are just too complicated. I don't really, the only times that I've sold them, I've priced them pretty high, like about $1,000 or more. And I have sold a few of them, but I don't try to, it's usually like somebody will be like, I really want that page, and I'm like, I can't let it go for less than X amount. And a few times people have gone for it. Like the 3-page comic I did for the Mountain Goats. Somebody bought all 3 of those pages from me. And a few other things like that, where I have sold some complex originals for prices that seem pretty high to me, but I just don't feel like it's worth letting them go for less.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I don't want us to kind of cut out while we're in the middle of a sentence or anything, so I think I'll kind of wrap it up there. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the 1 hour slot in your day to do something for other people. I love your comics. I love Thuff. Everyone should be reading Thuff. Jeffrey Lewis is obviously known for music, but I feel like the comics are kind of like they're missing out on half the story, half the talent that you're kind of putting out there, and it's like it's a real shame that people, I guess a lot of people at shows sometimes pass that stuff by because they have a perception of comics um, as superheroes, and yeah, Fuff is great, and I just love it, and really looking forward to everything that you're putting out in the future. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Look forward to your new comics, and hopefully see you sometime before too long.
Yeah, hopefully at a Newcastle gig or something like that. But yeah, awesome. I'll speak to you soon, Jeffrey.
Well,
Awesome.
later.
Take care. Bye.